And I now call on Alec Crowley. 8 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think also I would agree that this has been, by and large, a very good debate and hopefully reflects the type of politics, the kind of politics that we can have in Scotland, where we can debate big issues in a way that's constructive. In terms of the amendments in the motion, can I say that in terms of John Wilson's amendment, the position of the Labour Party in Scotland is that we do support being in NATO, and therefore we wouldn't be able to support that amendment. In terms of the Conservative amendment, we wouldn't support that, but interestingly the Conservative amendment asks the Scottish Labour Party should decide what is the position on the future of the UK's nuclear deterrent. And I would say to them that the Scottish Labour Party at its conference at the weekend, over 70% of the delegates and the affiliates voted to support a position which is that we would not renew Trident. So our position is quite clear. In terms of the motion and to our amendment, I would want to thank and congratulate the Government for agreeing to support the Labour amendment, and I do hope that in this area it's an area where that we can work together to make the arguments and make the case as to why it's not in Scotland's interest, it's not in the United Kingdom's interest, and it's not indeed in the world's interest for the UK to renew its Trident weapons. Can I say that I have certainly most of my adult life supported multilateral disarmament and believe that it's important that we do negotiate, and there has been successes there. But when it comes to the point of the renewal of Trident, I think it is legitimate that at that point you would pause and you would have a look and you would ask the question, is it right that some 30 years on for the last decision on this, is it right to renew it? And as Claire Baker pointed out, the world now is a very different place. And the threat in that world is very different. The threat to us as a country, to Scotland, but also as part of these Isles, to the United Kingdom, the threat is much different. And therefore it is legitimate that at that point you would ask yourself, should we spend between 100 and 160 odd billion pounds on replacing the Trident nuclear weapon? And I thought the contribution by Malcolm Chisholm, he highlighted very clearly that that case has not been made, and I'll come back to that. Trident is an expensive status symbol that has no military value and drains resources from conventional defences and socially useful investment. Jack Brodie reminded us that Malcolm Chisholm had quoted Tony Blair, who did say that it was more about a status and it was about having a seat at the top table. I would have to say, Presiding Officer, it's a fairly expensive seat at the top table, if that's all it is. Yeah, okay.
Does the member share our bewilderment at the Conservatives that are quite happy to cap families who have too many children but not cap the cost of an immoral and totally useless weapons of mass destruction?
Alec Riley.
Well, I think that is the point. If it was proven beyond doubt that having a nuclear deterrent was absolutely necessary for the sake, indeed if it was proven that we needed a nuclear deterrent for the safeguard of this country and the peoples of this country, then we wouldn't be arguing over the costs. The fact is that all the evidence suggests that it is not in our best interest to actually have a nuclear deterrent. Nuclear weapons have no military rationale. They are neither a deterrent nor a defence to the very real security threats that faces our nation. And indeed, to answer the Conservative question, if I could quote here from the former Secretary of State for Defence, Michael Portillo, who served in John Major's government from 1995 to 1997, so you would think he knows a wee bit about these things. Mr Portillo earlier this year said, "Our independent nuclear deterrent is not independent and doesn't constitute a deterrent against anybody that we regard as an enemy. It is a waste of money and it is a diversion of funds that might otherwise be spent on perfectly useful and usable weapons and troops." but some people have not caught up with this reality. It would suggest that the Conservative Party have not caught up with that reality. So I think, yeah, okay.
Christine Graham.
Can I press the member to go even further and say whether he considers in any event the use of such a weapon of mass destruction is immoral, that there is a moral argument against not holding them, as well as the deterrence, as well as the cost?
Alex Crowley.
I certainly think that there is a strong moral argument against investing in Trident and the use of Trident. The leader of the UK Labour Party has said that if he was Prime Minister, he would not press that button. So the case in terms of the moral argument against Trident, I think, has been made. But you know, the striking thing for me in looking at this debate is actually the lack of debate that has taken place right across Civic Scotland, right across Civic UK, and therefore hopefully the discussions on this issue that have been there over the weekend, hopefully the discussions, and if this Parliament passes the amended motion today, then hopefully we will start to generate a wider discussion across the United Kingdom, so that people will examine the arguments that are being made, because at the end of the day, if you examine the arguments, I think you would think twice. So we've had a number of speakers that have talked about polls, but I would want, and saying that these polls would support the renewal of Trident. I think when people actually look at the arguments, Malcolm Chisholm talked about a big tent, where he quoted the late Dennis Healey, but also generals, military people. The military leadership are at best neutral on this issue. I think once you start to present the facts, and that's what we have to do in terms of that, but it does leave us with a real issue and a real concern, and that's what Labour is focused on here in Scotland. Because we accept that there are people who are working in jobs that are dependent on Trident. And that's why I would commend the report from the STUC, the Case for a Scottish Defence Diversification Agency. Now, there are those who simply dismiss this as pie in the sky, but this report actually shows that where this has been done properly and done right, and they do point out not to, if you're looking for a bad example of defence diversification, then look no further than the UK Defence Diversification Agency. So there are bad examples, but there are examples right across the world that would be important for us to look at in terms of diversification of jobs. I think it's also important, and Malcolm Chisholm talked about this, where he said the job consequences of keeping Trident and the threat to conventional defence investment. So I think it's important also that people don't raise scare stories for places like Rosyth in my own constituency, where actually I would say Trident is a bigger threat to jobs there, and we should be investing in the conventional forces that are there. We were also keen, Presiding Officer, not to start trying to identify lots of areas that you could spend this money in. As our leader at a UK level has said, it's important, firstly, that we look at the defence sector, look at investment there, look at diversification, look at protecting jobs. But I certainly welcome this debate today. I think we need to move forward. We now need to make the case across the rest of the United Kingdom, because if you look at the evidence points clearly to not renewing the Trident nuclear weapon system. Thank you.